Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. If you've ever stared at a green circuit board and just kind of wondered how invisible lines of software running inside a tiny silicon chip can literally reach out and command the physical world, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today we're demystifying the ultimate bridge between software and hardware, GPIO and port programming. It's a really fascinating concept when you stop and think about it, right? I mean, how does a line of abstract typed code actually physically turn on a tangible light bulb, or spin a motor, or read a button press? It almost feels like magic. But as we're going to uncover today, it really just comes down to a beautifully logical system of switches and memory. All right, let's kick things off. Section 1, the GPIO bridge. To really grasp how this magic works, we need to zoom all the way in. We're going from the tangible, physical world of buttons and lights right down into the microscopic memory of the microcontroller itself. You see those little metallic legs sticking out of the chip? Those are your general-purpose input-output pins, or GPIO. They are, quite literally, the programmable bridges between the chip's digital brain and the outside world. And the absolute key phrase here is general purpose. These pins don't have some fixed, permanent job. As the programmer, you get to dictate exactly how every single one of those pins behaves. So, every single GPIO pin can be set into one of two fundamental modes. You can kind of think of them as personalities. On one side, we've got digital input. In this mode, the pin acts as a listener. It just quietly monitors the line, waiting to detect an incoming electrical signal from the outside. Then, on the other side, we have digital output. In this mode, the pin acts as a driver. It actively pushes electrical current out into the world to force some sort of physical action. Okay, let's dive into this. What real-world devices are we actually bridging here? Well, on the input side, our listeners, we've got things like push buttons, temperature sensors, keypads, things that detect user actions or environmental data. On the output side, our drivers, we have visual indicators like LEDs, audio alerts like buzzers, and mechanical drivers like motors. The microcontroller essentially sits right in the middle. It translates the physical actions from the input devices into the digital software domain and then pushes digital commands right back out to those output devices. Which brings us to Section 2, speaking in voltage. So here's the catch. Software only understands ones and zeros, right? But hardware only speaks electricity. So how does that translation actually happen? Well, digital math maps directly onto concrete electrical voltage thresholds. A logic 1, or a high state, isn't just a number in the code. It represents a physical voltage. In a standard system, that's usually around 5 volts or 3.3 volts, which means a switch is on or active. Conversely, a logic 0, or a low state, maps to 0 volts, or ground, meaning the switch is off. Your microcontroller is basically just reading and writing these specific voltages to communicate. But, and this is absolutely crucial, there is a massive danger lurking in this voltage translation. What happens if a pin isn't connected to 5 volts, and it isn't connected to 0 volts either? It enters what we call an undefined state, a floating input. Because microcontrollers are incredibly sensitive, a floating pin will start picking up invisible environmental electrical noise. It basically turns into an antenna. It will wildly fluctuate between high and low, and that creates completely unpredictable chaos for your software. So to tame this chaos, engineers use a brilliantly simple solution: pull resistors. You physically tie the pin to a default voltage using a resistor. A pull-up resistor connects the pin to your supply voltage, ensuring that when nothing else is happening, the default state is securely held high. On the flip side, a pull-down resistor connects the pin to ground, holding that default state securely low. This guarantees that your microcontroller always reads a clean, stable signal. Moving on to Section 3, the Register Command Center. Now that we've wrangled the electrical physics, we need to look at how we actually control these pins from our software. We're shifting our focus way down, microscopic, deep inside the microcontroller to the GPIO registers. Think of registers as highly specialized hardware memory boxes. They are the literal, direct interface between the C code you type on your keyboard and the physical electrical circuitry on the silicon chip. For standard microcontrollers, there are 3 primary registers you absolutely have to know. First up is the direction register, or DDR. Think of this guy as your master configuration switch. Before you can do anything else, you have to tell the microcontroller what role a pin is going to play. Writing a binary 0 into this register sets the corresponding pin as an input, our listener. Writing a binary 1 sets it as an output, our driver. You've got to initialize this first, no exceptions. Once it's configured as an input, we use the pin register. This is your read-only portal. It acts like a live snapshot of the outside world.
Whatever physical electrical state is hitting those pins right at this exact moment, whether that's 5 volts or 0 volts, is instantly recorded in this register as a 1 or a 0. This is the exact register we query in our code to detect if someone physically pressed a button.
And finally, if we configure the pin as an output, we use the port register. This is our write-only driver. When you write a 1 into this specific memory box, the microcontroller physically pushes a high voltage out of the actual pin. If you write a 0, it drops the voltage to low. The port register is entirely responsible for pushing the electricity out to do things like, say, light up an LED.
All right, Section 4, Ports and Pins.
Now, microcontrollers don't just have 1 or 2 pins, they have dozens. To manage them efficiently, the hardware organizes them into physical groupings. Pins are bundled together into ports, typically 8 pins to a port, which perfectly matches an 8-bit architecture. Now, you have 2 ways to program them. With port-level control, you write an entire 8-bit byte at once, changing all 8 pins simultaneously. But what if you only want to turn on one single LED without messing up the other 7 pins? That's where pin-level control comes in. And this brilliantly illustrates why we use bitwise operators like AND, OR, and NOT. They let you target and flip one single bit inside that register, leaving the rest completely untouched.
Section 5. Real-world execution.
Let's bring all these rules, registers, and bitwise logic together into real, tangible code examples. Let's make something happen in the real world. First, we're going to light an LED. But wait, look at this physical breadboard setup first. Before we write a single line of code, we have to protect the hardware. Without a current limiting resistor, usually somewhere around 220 to 470 ohms, we will literally blow up the LED with unrestricted current, and honestly, we might even fry the chip itself. Hardware safety first, for sure. Okay, hardware is safe. Here is the AVR C code. In the first line, we use a bitwise OR operation to push a 1 specifically into the PB0 slot of the direction register. This tells the chip, hey, make pin 0 on port B an output. In the second line, we do the exact same operation, but on the port register. By forcing that bit to a 1, the chip pushes 5 volts out of the pin, and boom, our physical LED lights up. It really is incredibly elegant.
Now let's handle inputs. When we interface a physical switch, pressing the button connects the pin either directly to ground or to our supply voltage. Thanks to that pole resistor we talked about earlier, the hardware is actively creating a clean, crisp transition between an active low or an active high signal. To read that physical button press in the software, we first use a bitwise AND with a NOT operator to force a 0 into the direction register. That sets pin 1 as an input. Then we use an if statement to continually check the pin register. We're literally telling the code, keep listening to this memory box. The exact moment that specific bit drops to a 0 volts logic state, trigger the action because the physical button was just pressed. And finally, Section 6, the 4-step workflow.
We've covered the physics, the hardware, the registers, and the code. Now let's build all of this into our ultimate, repeatable 4-step workflow for literally any embedded systems project. Think of this as the journey of your signal. Step 1, configure the DDR. Always tell the chip who is listening and who is driving. Step 2, read the pin register to gather your physical input data. Step 3, combine your logic. This is your C code, your if and else statements deciding what to actually do. And step 4, write to the port register to push your final decision back out into the physical world. If you follow these 4 steps, you have mastered basic hardware control. To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with a quick quiz to test your new knowledge. So, what happens if a button input is left floating? Think back to the invisible environmental noise we talked about and the total chaos it causes. If you can answer that, you understand the absolute most critical hardware failure point in embedded systems. Keep exploring, keep building, and I'll see you in the next explainer.